The static-filled radio crackled. To life in the makeshift command center. On the 15th floor of the Denver Federal Building, its urgent transmission cutting through the oppressive silence that had become Jake Harrison's constant companion. Over the past 3 weeks. Phoenix is gone, repeat, Phoenix is gone, the desperate voice announced before dissolving into electronic noise, joining the growing list of fallen cities that Harrison had been methodically marking off on his wall map with red X's. Miami, Atlanta, Chicago, Seattle, all dark now, consumed by the spreading infection that had transformed the United States into a graveyard of the living dead. As a career military commander with 23 years of service, Harrison had faced hostile forces in Afghanistan and Iraq, but nothing had prepared him for this enemy that felt no pain, knew no fear, and grew stronger with every human they claimed. Dr. Emily Rodriguez, her usually pristine lab coat now stained with 3 weeks of desperate survival, looked up from her makeshift research station where she had been analyzing blood samples under a battery-powered microscope, her dark eyes reflecting the same grim determination that had kept their group of 43 survivors alive since the outbreak reached Denver. The mutation rate is accelerating, she announced, her voice carrying the weight of scientific discovery mixed with human dread, and they're not just randomly wandering anymore. There's a pattern to their movements, almost like they're communicating. Marcus Thompson, still wearing the torn remains of his Denver Police Department uniform, nodded grimly from his position at the reinforced windows where he maintained constant watch over the streets below, his weathered hands gripping his service weapon as he observed the growing mass of undead figures that had been steadily gathering around their building for the past 48 hours. The former beat cop had lost his partner, his precinct, and most of his faith in humanity's chances, but his protective instincts remained razor-sharp as he watched over the diverse group that had become his makeshift family. 20-year-old Ashley Miller, an engineering student at the University of Colorado whose semester had been interrupted by the end of civilization, worked frantically on reinforcing their barricades with salvaged materials, her young mind adapting to survival with the same analytical precision she had once applied to structural mechanics. Meanwhile, Robert "Bobby" Williams, a grizzled mechanic in his 50s whose automotive shop had become an early zombie feeding ground, kept their generators running and weapons maintained with the kind of practical expertise that had become invaluable in their new reality. The group had transformed the federal building into a fortress of sorts, using Ashley's engineering knowledge and Bobby's mechanical skills to create defensive positions, secure food and water storage, and establish escape routes. But Harrison knew their situation was becoming increasingly untenable as supplies dwindled and the zombie presence outside continued to grow. The infected showed signs of evolution that chilled him to the bone. They had learned to work together, using crude tools and demonstrating problem-solving abilities that suggested the virus was not just reanimating dead tissue but creating some form of collective intelligence. Through the reinforced glass, Harrison watched as dozens of zombies coordinated their efforts to stack debris against the building's lower floors, their movements displaying an eerie synchronization that reminded him more of an army than a mindless horde. Radio transmissions from other survivor groups had described similar behavior in other cities before those transmissions went silent forever, suggesting that humanity was facing an enemy that adapted and learned from each encounter. As the sun began to set over the mountain skyline, casting long shadows across the zombie-filled streets, Harrison made the decision that would determine whether his group lived to see another dawn. They would have to abandon their carefully fortified position and venture into the underground tunnel system that connected downtown Denver, a treacherous journey through unknown dangers but their only hope of escaping the growing siege above ground. The sound of breaking glass from the lower floors announced that their time had run out, and as alarm bells began ringing throughout the building, Harrison grabbed his rifle and shouted the order that would launch them into the most dangerous phase of their survival, knowing that the next few hours would determine whether humanity's last stand in Denver would end in heroic escape or tragic extinction. The emergency ladder rattled under Bobby's weight as he descended into the pitch-black storm drain beneath the Denver Federal Building, his flashlight beam cutting through darkness that seemed to swallow sound itself, while above them the crescendo of breaking glass and inhuman moans announced that their former sanctuary had finally fallen to the relentless zombie horde. Harrison followed close behind, helping Dr. Rodriguez navigate the slippery metal rungs with her precious research samples secured in a waterproof backpack that represented humanity's best hope of understanding their undead enemy, each step downward taking them further from the familiar hell above ground and deeper into an unknown subterranean nightmare. The storm drain system stretched endlessly in both directions like concrete arteries beneath the dying city, its walls slick with moisture that reflected their flashlight beams in eerie patterns while the distant echo of their footsteps seemed to announce their presence to whatever horrors might be lurking in the tunnels ahead. Marcus took point position with his service weapon drawn, his police training kicking in as he swept each intersection with practiced precision, though nothing in his years of law enforcement had prepared him for the discovery that zombies had learned to track their prey through scent trails that lingered for hours in the stagnant underground air. Ashley stayed close to the group's center, her engineering mind automatically cataloging the tunnel system's construction and potential structural weaknesses while fighting off claustrophobic panic that threatened to overwhelm her as they moved deeper into the maze-like network of concrete passages. Dr. Rodriguez shared her most terrifying discovery in hushed whispers as they walked, explaining that her research had revealed the virus wasn't simply reanimating dead tissue but was actually creating neural connections between infected individuals, forming a primitive but rapidly evolving collective consciousness that allowed the zombies to coordinate their attacks and share information across vast distances. The implications sent chills through the group as they realized they weren't just fighting individual monsters but facing an enemy that grew more intelligent with every person it infected, learning from each encounter and adapting its tactics accordingly. Their underground journey took an unexpected turn when they encountered muffled voices echoing from a side tunnel, leading them to discover the Peterson family, David, a middle-aged accountant, his wife Linda, a former nurse, and their teenage twins Alex and Samantha, who had been hiding in the drainage system for 5 days after their apartment building was overrun. The reunion brought both hope and suspicion as Harrison's group welcomed the newcomers while Marcus's cop instincts detected something troubling about Linda's nervous behavior and the way she kept her left arm pressed tightly against her side beneath her jacket. Trust became a deadly luxury when Ashley noticed the telltale bite marks on Linda's forearm during a rest stop, forcing Harrison to confront the impossible choice between compassion and survival as the group debated whether to abandon the infected woman or risk everyone's safety by continuing together. David pleaded desperately for his wife's life while the twins watched in horror, not understanding why the adults spoke in urgent whispers about their mother's condition. But Dr. Rodriguez's examination confirmed their worst fears. Linda was in the early stages of infection and would likely turn within hours. The moral implications of their situation created fractures within the group as Marcus argued for immediate quarantine while Bobby suggested they couldn't afford to show mercy in their current circumstances, leaving Harrison to make command decisions that would define what kind of people they would become in this new world. Their heated discussion was interrupted by splashing sounds echoing through the tunnels, followed by the horrifying realization that zombies had discovered their entry point and were now following their trail through the storm drains, their movements creating ripples in the contaminated water that carried the virus and made every step a potential death sentence. Dr. Rodriguez's portable testing kit revealed that the underground water supply had indeed been compromised by runoff from the infected city above, meaning their escape route was slowly poisoning them with every breath of humid tunnel air they inhaled. The group pressed forward with increasing urgency as the sounds of pursuit grew closer, their flashlights revealing disturbing evidence that other survivors had attempted this same escape route. Abandoned backpacks, scattered bones, and ominous dark stains on the tunnel walls told the story of those who hadn't made it through the underground labyrinth alive. As they approached a major junction where multiple tunnels converged, Harrison made the tactical decision to split the group temporarily, sending Marcus and Ashley ahead to scout potential exit points while he stayed with the others to slow down their zombie pursuers using improvised explosives that Bobby had created from cleaning supplies found in a maintenance closet. The section ended with Linda Peterson letting out a low moan and collapsing against the tunnel wall, her eyes beginning to show the telltale cloudiness of infection while her family watched in helpless terror, knowing that their underground exodus had just become exponentially more dangerous. The blinding spotlight that suddenly illuminated the storm drain tunnel should have been a beacon of hope, but Marcus Thompson's police instincts immediately recognized the professional military formation of the armed figures silhouetted against the light, their weapons trained with lethal precision on the exhausted group of survivors who had just emerged from 3 hours of underground hell. "Drop your weapons and put your hands where we can see them," commanded a stern voice with Colonel's authority, and Harrison reluctantly complied while calculating the odds of resistance against what appeared to be a full squad of active military personnel. Colonel Richard Stone emerged from behind the spotlight wearing pristine combat fatigues that seemed impossibly clean compared to the survivors' filthy, blood-stained clothing, his steel-gray eyes scanning their group with the calculating assessment of a predator evaluating potential prey rather than a rescuer greeting fellow humans. The military outpost that Stone led them to appeared legitimate at first glance: razor-wire perimeters, functioning generators, well-armed guards, and most importantly, no visible zombie presence, creating a false sense of security that allowed the survivors to lower their guard for the first time in weeks. Dr. Rodriguez felt genuine relief when Stone's medical staff examined her research samples with professional interest, offering her access to a fully equipped laboratory where she could continue her vital work on understanding the zombie virus, though she failed to notice the subtle surveillance cameras that recorded her every movement and conversation. David Peterson wept with gratitude when military medics sedated his infected wife Linda and promised to monitor her condition in their medical facility, not realizing that she was being transferred to a section of the compound that prisoners never left alive. The twins Alex and Samantha were separated from their father under the pretense of providing them with proper meals and clean clothes, while Ashley Miller found herself assigned to engineering duties that seemed designed to keep her away from the compound's restricted areas where suspicious sounds echoed through the night. Bobby Williams's mechanical expertise earned him immediate respect from the motor pool sergeants, but his requests to inspect the facility's defensive systems were politely deflected with explanations about security protocols and classified military procedures. Harrison's military background should have granted him immediate access to strategic planning sessions, but Stone consistently excluded him from command briefings while subtly interrogating him about other survivor groups and their locations throughout the Denver metropolitan area. The first sign that something was fundamentally wrong came when Dr. Rodriguez discovered that the laboratory's previous research focused not on developing a cure for the zombie virus, but on weaponizing it for battlefield applications, with detailed files describing experiments designed to create controllable zombie soldiers that could be directed against enemy forces. Her horror deepened when she accessed classified data revealing that Stone's team had been capturing survivors from other groups for weeks, using them as test subjects in grotesque experiments that violated every principle of medical ethics and human decency. The facility's lower levels contained holding cells filled with both zombies and living humans who had been subjected to various iterations of the virus, creating a nightmarish laboratory where the boundaries between victim and monster had been deliberately obscured by mad science conducted under military authority. Ashley's engineering assignment led her to discover the compound's true purpose when she was asked to design more efficient containment systems for what the guards euphemistically called biological assets, and her access to building schematics revealed hidden chambers filled with experimental subjects who had been transformed into something far worse than ordinary zombies. Marcus uncovered the deception when he recognized some of the facility's test subjects as Denver police officers who had been reported missing during the initial outbreak, their partially decomposed faces still bearing traces of their former humanity while exhibiting enhanced strength and primitive tool use capabilities that suggested deliberate modification. The survivors realized they had traded one form of captivity for another when Stone's true intentions became clear during a dinner conversation where he casually mentioned his belief that the zombie apocalypse represented an evolutionary opportunity for humanity to develop biological weapons that would ensure American military dominance for generations. Harrison's military training helped him recognize the signs of a research facility operating outside legal oversight, and his growing suspicions were confirmed when he discovered that Stone's unit had gone rogue months before the outbreak, establishing their compound as an unauthorized black site for biological weapons development. The group's desperate situation intensified when they learned that other survivor communities throughout Colorado were being systematically captured and delivered to Stone's facility, where they disappeared into the experimental programs that had already claimed hundreds of victims. Bobby's access to the motor pool allowed him to begin sabotaging vehicles and communication equipment while Ashley used her engineering knowledge to identify critical infrastructure vulnerabilities that could aid their escape. The section reached its climax when Dr. Rodriguez witnessed the horrific results of Stone's experiments firsthand. Human subjects who had been infected with modified versions of the zombie virus that allowed them to retain partial intelligence while becoming completely obedient to military commands, creating the perfect biological weapons for a colonel who had lost all connection to human morality in his pursuit of ultimate power. The explosion that destroyed Colonel Stone's biological weapons facility lit up the pre-dawn Colorado sky like a deadly sunrise, sending shockwaves through the valley as Harrison's group raced through the mountain wilderness with liberated survivors and stolen military supplies, their desperate escape punctuated by the screams of experimental subjects who had been freed from their containment cells but remained trapped in their nightmarish hybrid existence between human and zombie. Ashley's sabotage had worked perfectly, overloading the facility's power grid and triggering a chain reaction that consumed the laboratory complex in flames. But the group knew that Stone's surviving forces would be hunting them with military precision and advanced tracking equipment that made the wilderness their only hope for sanctuary. Dr. Rodriguez clutched her rescued research data against her chest as they climbed treacherous mountain paths in darkness, the stolen files containing evidence of Stone's war crimes serving as both a burden and a responsibility that weighed heavily on her scientific conscience. The Peterson twins Alex and Samantha struggled to keep pace with the adults, their teenage bodies pushed beyond exhaustion while they grappled with the traumatic knowledge that their mother Linda had become one of Stone's experimental subjects before the facility's destruction consumed her transformed remains. Marcus Thompson led the rear guard with Bobby Williams, both men constantly scanning their back trail for signs of pursuit while helping the shell-shocked survivors they had liberated from Stone's holding cells, including Janet Murphy, a former Denver teacher whose 3 weeks of captivity had left her psychologically shattered but determined to warn other communities about the military's betrayal. The mountain terrain offered natural advantages for defense but also presented deadly challenges as altitude sickness and dropping temperatures threatened the group's survival almost as much as their human and zombie pursuers, forcing Harrison to make difficult decisions about rest stops and resource allocation while maintaining their desperate pace toward higher elevations. Their salvation came in the form of Thomas Mitchell, a weathered park ranger in his early 50s who had been surviving alone in the Colorado Rockies since the outbreak began, his intimate knowledge of the wilderness and prepositioned supply caches making him an invaluable ally for the exhausted refugees. Mitchell led them to an abandoned ski resort nestled high in the mountains, its remote location and elevated position providing both strategic advantages and isolation from the zombie hordes that had overrun the lower elevations, though the facility required significant work to become truly defensible against coordinated attacks. The ski lodge's main building offered multiple floors for observation posts and sleeping quarters, while the equipment sheds and maintenance facilities provided Bobby with workshops for creating defensive improvements and repairing their salvaged gear from Stone's compound. Ashley immediately began assessing the resort's structural integrity and defensive potential, designing reinforcements for windows and entrances while planning escape routes through the surrounding terrain in case their mountain sanctuary came under siege. Dr. Rodriguez established a new laboratory in the resort's medical facility, finally able to continue her research on the zombie virus using the data and samples she had rescued from Stone's experiments, her work taking on new urgency as she discovered that the modified virus strains showed alarming resistance to environmental factors like cold and altitude. The group's temporary safety allowed them to address psychological trauma and internal conflicts that had been suppressed during their flight from Denver, with David Peterson struggling to accept his wife's death while his children dealt with survivors' guilt and the horrific memories of their captivity. Marcus found himself questioning his role as protector when Janet Murphy revealed that several police officers had willingly collaborated with Stone's experiments, forcing him to confront the possibility that law enforcement institutions he had served faithfully had been corrupted beyond redemption. Thomas Mitchell's survival experience proved invaluable as he taught the group advanced wilderness skills and shared intelligence about zombie behavior patterns he had observed during months of solitary observation, including the disturbing revelation that the infected showed increased aggression and coordination during certain weather conditions. The mountain fortress seemed like a permanent solution until Mitchell's weather monitoring equipment detected massive atmospheric disturbances moving across the continental United States, suggesting that the zombie hordes were responding to environmental changes in ways that current scientific understanding couldn't explain. Dr. Rodriguez's research revealed that the virus had evolved to exploit atmospheric pressure variations and electromagnetic fields, allowing infected individuals to sense and respond to weather patterns that triggered massive migration behaviors across entire regions. As winter began to fade and spring temperatures started melting mountain snow, the group realized with growing horror that their elevated sanctuary might have placed them directly in the path of millions of zombies following ancient migration routes toward higher elevations, turning their defensive advantage into a potentially deadly trap. The section concluded with Mitchell's radio equipment picking up distress signals from other mountain communities reporting unprecedented zombie activity, while long-range observations through the resort's telescope revealed dark masses moving through distant valleys like living rivers of death flowing inexorably toward the peaks where the survivors had sought refuge. The morning mist cleared from the valley below to reveal what could only be described as the apocalypse made manifest, as Thomas Mitchell's weathered hands gripped the telescope controls while his voice cracked with disbelief at the sight of millions upon millions of zombies moving across the Colorado landscape in perfect formation, their collective movement creating a dark river of death that stretched beyond the horizon and defied every assumption the survivors had made about the chaotic nature of the undead. Harrison pressed his eye to the scope and felt his military training falter at the tactical impossibility before them, watching as the massive horde demonstrated coordination that surpassed anything he had witnessed in 2 decades of commanding human soldiers, their movements synchronized with mechanical precision that suggested intelligence operating on a scale beyond individual consciousness. Dr. Rodriguez documented the phenomenon with scientific fascination mixed with existential terror, her portable instruments detecting electromagnetic signatures emanating from the horde that pulsed in rhythmic patterns resembling brainwave activity, leading her to the horrifying conclusion that millions of individual zombies had somehow merged into a single, continent-spanning organism capable of collective thought and strategic planning. The sheer magnitude of the approaching force rendered Ashley's engineering defenses meaningless, as her calculations revealed that even if every zombie moved at walking speed, the pressure of bodies against their mountain fortress would be equivalent to a slow-motion tsunami capable of crushing buildings and reshaping the landscape itself through pure mass and momentum. Marcus Thompson established communication protocols between the resort's various observation posts, his police experience helping him coordinate defensive positions while simultaneously recognizing the futility of conventional tactics against an enemy that numbered in the millions and showed no concern for individual casualties or survival instincts. Bobby Williams worked with desperate efficiency to convert the resort's snowmaking equipment into weapons systems, rigging explosive charges and mechanical triggers that could potentially create controlled avalanches to redirect or bury portions of the approaching horde, though even his most optimistic projections suggested their defenses would delay the inevitable for mere hours rather than days. The Peterson twins Alex and Samantha proved invaluable as runners and spotters, their young eyes sharp enough to track individual zombie movements while their traumatized minds found focus in the immediate demands of survival preparation, helping Thomas Mitchell identify geological weak points in the mountainside that could be exploited to create natural barriers. Dr. Rodriguez made her most significant discovery when atmospheric readings revealed that the zombie migration was being guided by electromagnetic pulses broadcast from major urban centers, suggesting that surviving communication infrastructure was somehow transmitting navigation signals that directed the undead masses toward specific geographic targets with mathematical precision. The first direct contact came when advanced scouts from the main horde reached the resort's outer perimeter, these enhanced zombies moving with intelligence and coordination that shocked the survivors as they watched the creatures systematically probe defensive positions, test barriers, and communicate their findings to the approaching mass through subsonic vocalizations that carried information across vast distances. Harrison's combat experience became crucial when he recognized that these scout units were conducting military-style reconnaissance, mapping terrain features and defensive capabilities with tactical sophistication that forced the group to abandon their obvious fortifications and instead prepare hidden positions that might escape detection from increasingly intelligent enemies. The engagement with the scout force revealed that zombies had evolved beyond simple hunger-driven aggression, as they demonstrated the ability to use tools, coordinate flanking maneuvers, and even withdraw strategically when faced with superior firepower, suggesting that the virus had fundamentally altered human neural architecture to create something entirely new and terrifyingly adaptive. Thomas Mitchell's sacrifice came when he volunteered to trigger a massive avalanche using his intimate knowledge of the mountain's geological instabilities, positioning explosive charges at critical stress points that would bring down an entire mountainside to block the primary access route to their position, his final act saving the group while highlighting the terrible cost of survival in their transformed world. The avalanche's temporary success was overshadowed by seismic readings that revealed the main horde adapting its approach in real time, splitting into multiple streams that sought alternate routes through mountain passes with the fluid intelligence of water finding its way around obstacles, their collective consciousness apparently capable of processing topographical information and adjusting strategy accordingly. Dr. Rodriguez's field examination of a captured zombie revealed evolutionary changes that defied conventional biology, including specialized neural pathways that functioned as organic transmitters, allowing individual infected to share sensory data and tactical information with the larger network through biological processes that resembled radio communication more than normal brain activity. The section culminated as the massive horde began its final approach to the ski resort, millions of coordinated zombies creating seismic vibrations that shook the mountain foundations while their collective intelligence demonstrated an understanding of siege warfare that combined relentless persistence with adaptive problem-solving capabilities that made conventional military defense strategies completely obsolete. The emergency radio transmission that pierced through the static at dawn brought both hope and devastating revelation as Dr. Rodriguez frantically adjusted the frequency controls, her hands trembling with excitement as she locked onto a clear signal originating from NORAD's Cheyenne Mountain facility, where a team of government scientists had apparently been conducting their own research on the zombie pandemic while the rest of civilization crumbled around them. Harrison grabbed the microphone with military urgency, identifying himself and requesting immediate evacuation support, but the response from Dr. Jonathan Hayes, the facility's lead researcher, carried undertones of scientific arrogance that immediately raised red flags about the true nature of their operations deep within the fortified mountain complex. Dr. Rodriguez's analysis of the electromagnetic signatures she had been tracking suddenly made horrifying sense when Hayes inadvertently revealed that his team had been using the nation's surviving cell tower network to amplify and direct the zombie hive mind signals, believing they could harness the collective intelligence for military applications rather than seeking to destroy it. The ski resort's makeshift laboratory became a hub of frantic activity as Rodriguez worked to triangulate the source of the control signals, her equipment revealing that multiple transmission stations across the country were broadcasting coordinated pulses that guided zombie movement with the precision of a massive remote control system operated by humans who had lost all moral boundaries in their pursuit of scientific advancement. Ashley Miller's engineering expertise proved crucial when she discovered that certain individuals possessed natural electromagnetic resistance that could interfere with the zombie network's communication protocols, a revelation that came when she noticed her proximity to the resort's radio equipment caused observable disruptions in the approaching horde's coordination patterns. Marcus Thompson organized the group's departure from their mountain stronghold with tactical precision, knowing that their only chance of survival lay in reaching the transmission facilities before the massive zombie army completed its encirclement, while Bobby Williams prepared their salvaged vehicles for a desperate journey through terrain crawling with undead scouts and hostile environmental conditions. The Peterson twins Alex and Samantha demonstrated remarkable courage when they volunteered to serve as advanced scouts for the dangerous trek, their small size and agility allowing them to move through zombie-infested areas while reporting back on horde movements and safe passage routes that larger adults could never navigate successfully. David Peterson struggled with the decision to allow his children such dangerous responsibilities, but the loss of his wife Linda and the harsh realities of their situation had forced him to accept that survival required every member of their group to contribute according to their unique abilities and circumstances. The journey toward the nearest transmission facility revealed the true scope of the zombie network's sophistication as the group encountered coordinated ambushes and tactical maneuvers that suggested their movements were being monitored and anticipated by the controlling intelligence, forcing them to constantly adapt their route and travel methods to avoid detection. Dr. Rodriguez made breakthrough discoveries about individual immunity when she tested Ashley's blood and found genetic markers that seemed to provide natural resistance to the virus's electromagnetic control mechanisms, leading to the startling possibility that certain humans could move through zombie-controlled territory without triggering the aggressive responses that made normal travel impossible. Marcus faced his most emotionally devastating moment when their route took them through his old neighborhood, where he encountered his infected wife and teenage daughter among a roaming pack of zombies, forcing him to make the impossible choice between his duty to protect the group and his desperate desire to somehow save his transformed family members. The encounter with Marcus's infected family provided Dr. Rodriguez with crucial research material when she observed that recently turned zombies retained significantly more human memory and emotional responses than those who had been infected for longer periods, suggesting that the virus's control mechanisms strengthened over time while gradually erasing individual personality and human consciousness. Bobby's mechanical skills became essential when their vehicles broke down in hostile territory, requiring him to perform repairs while Ashley and the Peterson twins maintained watch for zombie patrols that seemed to appear with increasing frequency as they approached their destination. The group's infiltration of the first transmission facility revealed the horrifying extent of the conspiracy when they discovered detailed records showing that government scientists had been deliberately directing zombie hordes toward specific population centers to test their control capabilities, treating millions of human deaths as acceptable collateral damage in their quest to weaponize the undead. Ashley's unique immunity allowed her to move through the facility's zombie-infested lower levels and access the main transmission equipment, but her sabotage efforts triggered automated security systems that alerted other facilities to their presence and marked them as priority targets for elimination by both human and zombie forces. The section concluded with the group's successful destruction of the first control node, causing immediate disruption to zombie coordination in their immediate area, but also revealing through intercepted communications that 5 other major facilities were still operational and that their actions had identified them as the primary threat to a network that spanned the entire continental United States and controlled millions of undead soldiers in humanity's darkest hour. The massive blast doors of NORAD's Cheyenne Mountain facility groaned open like the gates of hell itself as Harrison led his battle-hardened group into the most heavily fortified complex in North America, their stolen military credentials providing temporary access to an underground labyrinth where government scientists had been orchestrating humanity's destruction while hiding behind tons of reinforced concrete and steel. Dr. Jonathan Hayes greeted them in the sterile command center with the cold enthusiasm of a researcher welcoming new test subjects. his team of surviving military personnel and civilian scientists representing the last vestige of official authority in a world where power had become synonymous with the ability to control millions of undead soldiers through electromagnetic manipulation. The facility's massive screens displayed real-time zombie movements across the entire continent, revealing the terrifying scope of the network as Harrison watched coordinated horde deployments that resembled military campaigns more than random infection spread, with specific targets being systematically eliminated while certain areas remained completely untouched according to strategic calculations that treated human life as expendable resources. Dr. Rodriguez felt her scientific ethics crumble as Hayes enthusiastically demonstrated their latest achievements, showing how they could direct zombie armies to destroy rival survivor communities while protecting allied groups who had agreed to provide test subjects and resources in exchange for temporary safety from the very hordes the facility controlled. Ashley Miller's electromagnetic immunity became the focal point of intense interest when Hayes' team discovered her unique properties, leading to their immediate attempts to capture and study her while simultaneously recognizing that her abilities posed an existential threat to their entire control network if she could interfere with transmission signals at multiple facilities. The complex's lower levels revealed the true horror of their operations as Marcus Thompson discovered holding cells filled with captured survivors who were being used for viral experiments, weapons testing, and behavioral studies that violated every principle of human decency while contributing to research that strengthened the zombie network's capabilities. Bobby Williams used his mechanical expertise to sabotage critical infrastructure throughout the facility while pretending to assist with equipment maintenance, his subtle destruction targeting power systems and communication arrays that would cripple the complex's ability to coordinate with other control sites when the inevitable confrontation began. The Peterson twins Alex and Samantha proved instrumental in gathering intelligence about the facility's layout and security protocols, their youth allowing them to move through restricted areas without arousing suspicion while documenting the locations of key personnel and vulnerable systems that could be exploited during their planned assault. David Peterson struggled with mounting rage as he learned that his wife Linda's infection and transformation had been part of a deliberate field test conducted by Hayes' team, who had released modified virus strains in specific neighborhoods to study transmission rates and control mechanisms without regard for the human cost of their research. Dr. Rodriguez discovered that Janet Murphy, the traumatized teacher they had rescued from Stone's facility, was actually a deep-cover operative working for Hayes' network, her psychological breakdown having been carefully orchestrated to infiltrate survivor groups and report their locations and capabilities to the central command structure. The betrayal triggered a violent confrontation when Janet attempted to signal facility security, forcing Marcus to make a split-second decision that ended her life while revealing how thoroughly the remaining government apparatus had been corrupted by its pursuit of power through zombie control technology. Harrison's military training proved essential as he coordinated simultaneous attacks on multiple fronts, using Ashley's immunity to disable transmission equipment while Marcus and Bobby fought through corridors filled with both human guards and experimental zombie subjects that had been modified for enhanced combat effectiveness. The facility's defensive systems activated automatically when their sabotage efforts triggered security protocols, sealing blast doors and releasing specially trained zombie units that retained enough intelligence to use weapons and follow tactical commands while being completely immune to normal electromagnetic disruption techniques. Ashley's desperate race through the facility's central transmission chamber became a nightmarish gauntlet as she fought to reach the primary control systems while being pursued by both human soldiers and enhanced zombies that seemed to anticipate her every move through some form of shared intelligence network. Dr. Rodriguez made the ultimate sacrifice when she realized that destroying the facility's main transmission array would require someone to manually override safety systems from inside the heavily irradiated control room, her scientific knowledge making her the only person capable of completing the complex shutdown sequence that would sever the network's primary node. The section culminated in a massive explosion that destroyed the Cheyenne Mountain facility's transmission capabilities while simultaneously triggering automated responses from other control sites across the country, creating a technological warfare scenario where surviving humans fought against both zombie armies and the scattered remnants of a government that had chosen to embrace apocalypse rather than prevent it, setting the stage for humanity's final desperate stand against forces that combined the relentless hunger of the undead with the calculated cruelty of corrupted human intelligence. The radio frequencies erupted with desperate voices from across the shattered continent as Harrison coordinated humanity's final gambit, his hastily assembled network of survivor communities stretching from the Pacific Northwest to the Florida Everglades, each group preparing to simultaneously strike at the remaining zombie control nodes in a last-ditch effort to break the electromagnetic chains that had enslaved millions of undead to serve corrupt human masters. Ashley Miller stood at the center of the rebuilt transmission array that Dr. Rodriguez had died to create, her unique electromagnetic immunity now serving as the foundation for a counter-signal that could theoretically disrupt the zombie hive mind on a continental scale, though the process would require her to channel massive amounts of electrical energy that might prove fatal to her own nervous system. Marcus Thompson led teams of volunteers from dozens of survivor communities and coordinated assaults on the 5 remaining control facilities, his police training and hard-won combat experience helping him organize tactical strikes against heavily fortified positions defended by both military personnel and enhanced zombie soldiers that retained enough intelligence to operate advanced weapon systems. The Peterson twins Alex and Samantha had grown into seasoned fighters during their months of warfare, their youth and agility making them invaluable scouts who could infiltrate enemy positions and report on defensive capabilities, while their father David coordinated supply lines and communication networks that kept the scattered resistance forces connected across vast distances. Bobby Williams worked tirelessly to maintain the complex machinery that would broadcast Ashley's counter-signal, his mechanical expertise proving crucial as zombie hordes and hostile human forces converged on their position with the single-minded determination to prevent humanity's last desperate attempt at freedom from succeeding. The simultaneous attacks began at dawn as explosions rocked control facilities from coast to coast, each successful strike weakening the network's ability to coordinate zombie movements while triggering automated defensive responses that sent millions of undead soldiers marching toward the transmission sites with mechanical precision that spoke of intelligence operating beyond normal human comprehension. Dr. Hayes and his surviving government scientists launched their own counteroffensive from hidden bunkers, using portable transmission equipment to direct specially modified zombie units in surgical strikes against the Resistance's command centers, their tactical brilliance corrupted by years of treating human life as expendable resources in pursuit of absolute power through biological warfare. Ashley's connection to the transmission array created a feedback loop that allowed her to sense the zombie network's collective consciousness, experiencing firsthand the horrifying unity of millions of infected minds while simultaneously pushing her own electromagnetic field to its breaking point in an effort to shatter the bonds that held the Horde together. The battle raged across multiple fronts as Marcus led desperate assaults on fortified positions while zombie armies numbering in the millions pressed toward their transmission site, the very ground shaking under the weight of approaching undead as the counter-signal grew stronger and began disrupting the network's coordination protocols. Bobby's engineering modifications proved essential when the primary transmission equipment overloaded, forcing him to reroute power through backup systems while under fire from both human soldiers and zombies that had broken through the defensive perimeter with relentless determination to silence the signal that threatened their collective existence. The Peterson family fought with the fury of survivors who had lost everything to the network's manipulations, their coordinated teamwork representing the human bonds that the zombie collective could never understand or replicate, as David protected his children while they completed crucial sabotage missions that disabled enemy communication systems. Ashley's ultimate sacrifice came when she realized that breaking the network permanently required her to become a living transmission tower, channeling the counter-signal through her own body with enough power to reach every infected individual across the continent, knowing that the electrical load would destroy her nervous system but finally free humanity from the electromagnetic prison that had controlled their undead enemies. The moment of liberation arrived as Ashley's counter-signal reached critical amplitude, causing millions of zombies to suddenly stop their coordinated advance and begin wandering aimlessly as their collective consciousness shattered into individual fragments that retained only basic survival instincts without the intelligence or coordination that had made them such a formidable enemy. Marcus watched through tears as zombie hordes that had been unstoppable forces of destruction suddenly became manageable groups of individual threats that could be handled using conventional military tactics, while Bobby's equipment registered the complete collapse of the electromagnetic network that had enslaved both the living and the dead. The aftermath brought both victory and profound loss as surviving communities across the nation began the long process of rebuilding civilization while honoring the memory of those like Dr. Rodriguez and Ashley Miller who had given everything to ensure that humanity would have a future free from the nightmare of zombie servitude. Harrison stood among the ruins of the transmission facility as the sun set over a world where the undead still existed but no longer posed an existential threat to human survival, knowing that the scattered survivors would face years of difficult rebuilding but possessed the knowledge and experience necessary to prevent another apocalypse while creating new communities founded on the hard-won wisdom that freedom requires eternal vigilance against those who would sacrifice humanity for power. Chat control Sonnet 4.